G'day Formula One fans. Well, just a few days ago on Instagram, we released this. Who's getting Mercedes power units next year?
Well, Alpine.
Okay, what if George Russell stays at Mercedes?
Ooh, I see where you're going
Max
with this.
Verstappen goes to Mercedes. Here, Flavio, here's a sweetener to the deal, but we want Kimi Antonelli to continue with Alpine. We would like to have him back within 2 to 3 years.
That's
So if you haven't seen it, clearly it is a little bit bonkers, perhaps a little bit far-fetched, but we want to discuss it in a little bit more detail today as it did gain a lot of traction and we did have a lot of comments on it. Mick, obviously in the video, you had a little bit of a, well, maybe it is a possibility, but let's just cut to the chase. What do you think is going to happen with the Max Verstappen saga? Where do you think he's really going to go if you're betting your house on it?
So Max stays at Red Bull 2026. Toto is trying to lure him for 2027. That gives Mercedes the George Russell contract a 1 with the option of the second year. If Toto can't get Max for 2027, they activate the +1 for George and keep George in Mercedes.
And of course, Kimi Antonelli stays put. And to be fair, I think that is probably one of the best options because I've always thought Kimi and George just moving ahead from this point. Me personally, I think Max Verstappen is going to Aston Martin.
Yep.
But let's discuss the topic at hand. This theory that we came up with and why it's a possibility. Okay, we're just going to get stuck straight into it. Now, this comment is a long one, so bear with me. Mercedes will never send Kimi Antonelli on loan to Alpine. It would be a serious misstep. They've invested years and millions into his development, and handing him off now suggests they're underestimating his readiness. Red Bull never loaned out Max Verstappen, and Mercedes shouldn't treat Antonelli any differently. With Flavio Briatore at Alpine, a man known for his ruthlessly dropping drivers and was never cleared of cheating in Crashgate, it's a wrong environment for a young talent. He's an old-school advisor in the same mold as Helmut Marko, exactly the kind of influence modern F1 drivers can do without. Now, there's a lot to unpack here, and I definitely agree with some of his comments. Look,
Yeah.
I think Flavio Briatore is extremely lucky to continue in F1 after the Crashgate saga, but that's another story. I agree. Look, Flavio is definitely old school, but for me, Kimi Antonelli going over there, obviously we see it as a loan spell. Let's not forget, Kimi Antonelli would be a Mercedes driver in this situation.
Yep.
He's not one of Flavio's drivers. He's there as a deal sweetener. I think from Flavio's, Briatore's point of view, he loves a good deal. Perhaps it could be a package deal with obviously the Mercedes power unit coming next year. And I don't think it's detrimental to Kimi Antonelli's his development. Now, if he was maybe 22, 23, 24 years old and he had a few seasons at Mercedes, yeah, it would be terrible.
Yep.
But let's not forget, the kid's 18 years old.
Yep.
What's 1 year at Alpine? It might be better for his development being a little bit out of the public eye of being in such a top team.
Yeah, exactly. He steps away from the pressure of being in a top team. You know, he's only been in Formula One for a year. You look at George Russell with Williams, did his development there, then came in to the Mercedes factory team, number 2 driver, learnt off Lewis, and now has taken the reins of the team himself. Like, it's not such a silly idea for something like that to happen. Kimi doesn't leave Formula One. Kimi stays in Formula One and will come back to the senior team at some point. For me, I don't think he's literally just learned how to shave. So as far as hurting his development, stepping out of the lights of the big team for a year or two would only be good for him.
Yeah, I don't think it changes really anything. Mercedes would be heavily involved with what's going on at Alpine, should Kimi be there, of course. He'll be paired up with Pierre Gasly, most likely. And look, I think Pierre Gasly would be a good driver to be paired with because Gasly, he's pretty experienced now. He's also gone through some pretty tough times on his own with the Red Bull saga. I think Antonelli would do well alongside him. Yes, Briatore, now he's an interesting character, of course. Could that be detrimental? Well, I don't think, as we said, I think Briatore is a wheeler dealer. If this gives him better, like a better deal on the engine supplier. It also solves the problem of that second seat at Alpine.
I don't think you're wasting millions of development. Certainly not. The kid's 18, man. Put him in this team, out of the bright lights. Give him 2 years, then you bring him back alongside someone like Max, or if Russell stays. His development ceiling, like how long was George at Williams? You know what I mean? So your development's going to be at least
years,
minimum 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Before you can say you're out of that developmental stage and you're a fully fledged Top Gun Formula One driver.
So another comment we got was Max and George would be something to look at, but the problem would be George, if he can keep up with Max. Keep in mind, Max is still very well in his prime for the next 3 to 5 years, obviously depending on the car, while George is still pretty much on the developmental side. So it would be a hard sell on Toto if it goes that way. Now, yes, Max is in his prime, but I also believe George is in his prime.
By the sounds of it, he's talking about George is still developing as a driver, which I'm going to have to disagree with. George was at Williams. That was his developmental phase, right? Then he did the 2 years or 3 years next to Lewis. That was his developmental phase. George Russell is not developing anymore. George Russell has proven himself time and time again. If you put George Russell in Lando Norris's car right now, I can guarantee you, I feel like George will do a better job than Lando. Very rarely does George make a mistake.
She's a big call. She's a big call to the Lando fans.
George very rarely makes mistakes, right? We've seen how good he is on Saturday, and now we're starting to see how good he is on Sunday.
I agree. He's not in the developmental stage. You had Max and George in the same car. Like, obviously, I'm betting the house on Max.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. But George, you know, he's championship winning material if you give him the right car.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a handful of drivers on the grid that obviously if you give them the right car, they will win the world championship, and I think George Russell is one of them.
Yeah.
Now, another one was Toto would never give up Kimi, not after all the money and effort put into him. He's a generational talent, and it would be a waste of talent to send him there.
So what about all the money they've invested in George?
Exactly.
How do we know Kimi Antonelli's not going to be as good as George? Yes, he's a generational talent. Yeah, but he might not be. He might be just as good as George. Who's to say George isn't a generational talent?
I think a lot of people are sort of forgetting how young this kid is. Yes, he's got his first podium and he's got a pole already. We know he is a gun.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, there's a lot of development ahead of him.
Yeah, and also
now, whether it's better in Alpine or Mercedes, like we could argue, I think Mercedes obviously would be better. Like this theory is based on 1 or 2 years maximum. It's not Kimi going to Alpine for the next 5-6 years.
Yeah, he's not leaving Mercedes altogether.
He's coming back to Mercedes as a 20-year-old with potentially 2 or 3 years
under
experience
his belt.
Under his belt.
Also, too, you've got to remember, like it's the optics of it, because Kimi was literally thrown straight into a factory team, whereas like a lot of other drivers, Leclerc with Alfa Romeo, Verstappen came up through the Toro Rosso at the time.
Yeah.
Right? So Toto, fair enough, wanted to develop within. So he brought the young driver in rather than get someone else from the outside.
I wonder like what type of talks were done between Toto and James Vowles with Williams, if that was ever a possibility, like what we saw with Russell, you know, all those years ago. So perhaps that was probably...
Oh, that would have definitely been in the discussions, I reckon, for sure. Yeah. But again, you know, Toto was probably looking at his options and going, well, we're coming to the end of an old set of regulations. It's probably better to get a young driver in for a year before the new set of regulations, rather than go with someone maybe like Sainz.
Now, we got a few of these type of comments regarding the relationship of Max and George. Max and George could never be in the same team. Besides, Russell's contract ends this year, and it seems they won't reach an agreement to sign a new one. George could go to Aston Martin. That would be interesting. And we got a few more, like there is 0 chance George and Max will be teammates. No chance. George and Max teammates. It wouldn't work. They hate each other.
If you're Max Verstappen and you want to go into a team or a car that you believe that's going to give you the best chance at winning the championship, you're not going to give a shit who your teammate is. One, you're Max Verstappen. You would not
You fear nobody. You fear
exactly.
nobody.
You fear no one.
Yep.
Right? They are professionals. I'm sure people go to work every day alongside people they detest. Right?
And everyone at home going, yeah.
Yeah. Right? And you make it work. Why?
Yep.
Because you want to be in the team and the car that you believe gives you the best shot.
I think a lot of people at home are going, no, I don't want to be part of the team. It's just my only option. But I get where you're coming from, of course.
You're not joining a team to go and play paddle in Monaco.
Yeah.
You're not joining a team to go and have dinners after a race. You're joining the team because you believe that is the place to be for you to get race wins and for you to be in contention for a championship. So as professionals, what's happened in the past stays in the past, and they would work amicably.
They'll tolerate each other.
Yeah.
We only have to go a couple of seasons ago with Alpine, with Ocon and Gasly, who notoriously haven't really liked each other for a long time since
they were
junior,
kids.
right? It's gone on for a long time. They tolerated each other. Yes, things could have boiled over. There were certain things that popped up. But hey, that's what we want to see, right? As a viewer, you want to see some tension, of course. I think Max is the type of guy that is let bygones be bygones.
Yep.
This is my job. This is how I approach it.
Yep.
George, in this situation, I think it will affect him more because I think he likes playing that team leader role.
Yep.
But at the same time, he comes across as a proper team player. Seen it time and time again. So I would think that George would be like, okay, well, perhaps this is my best shot or my best option, so I'm going to have to stay here. I want to stay here. And I think George truly believes that he can beat Max.
Well, of course.
George is a good talent. And this is where I think also for Toto, it's almost like there's no risk here as such, because if it all goes pear-shaped after a season, just bring Kimi back. Or maybe it's that one-on-one contract with George where the option is obviously in Mercedes' favor for the extra year option. And if they see that it's just turning into an absolute cluster, maybe like a Nico Lewis situation, it's like, okay, George, we've decided not to re-sign for that +1.
Yep.
Kimi comes back and then everything just works on as it is. I would say, like, one of the comments, they did say George could go to Aston Martin, and of course that is a really strong possibility, and he would be a brilliant fit there.
Yeah. Yeah.
From a marketing perspective,
007, yes, bro.
You'll see him totally 007'd up, and you'll see him on plenty of Aston Martin ads in a suit. He'd love it. He would love it. Now, another comment was, not a chance for this happening. First, Toto will never lend out Kimi. Second, Kimi will hold Toto to his contract. Third, I don't think Max will join Mercedes if Russell is there. So 3 points in this one. Well, not a chance this is happening. Maybe. First, Toto will never lend out Kimi. Why not? He's still 18 years old.
Yep.
Development. Toto clearly has a thing for Max Verstappen.
Yep.
And this could potentially be his only opportunity to seize the moment. Kimi will hold Toto to his contract. Come on, mate.
Yeah.
The contract.
No.
Who do you think the contract... Like, Kimi, yes, he is a very fine young talent. I do not think the contract is in Kimi's favor.
Yeah.
And third, I don't think Max will join Mercedes if Russell's there. Max Verstappen would give no shits who was on the other side of the garage.
Yep.
I want to hear your thoughts.
Max not joining Mercedes because Russell's there. I said it just before. If he believes that Mercedes is the team and the car that will win him the championship, he's going to go there, regardless if it was George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, doesn't matter who it is. Second of all, Toto would never lend Kimi out. Well, why not? Yes, he's had a couple of standout performances, but he is not a proven talent yet. He's not a Lewis Hamilton. He's not a Charles Leclerc. He's not a George Russell. Toto turned around and said, Kimi, for example, you're going to Williams? This is just an example. Kimi's going to Williams. Kimi has no pull over Toto whatsoever because he's not in a position to yet. He's not proven yet.
Toto's the boss.
Exactly. And Mercedes would have every ounce of power over Kimi's contract. Go to Williams, go to Alpine.
Yeah. Mercedes are the boss at the end of the day. And if they say, we need you to go to this to continue your development, I'm pretty sure that's
what's going to happen.
Pretty much what's going to happen.
Well, it would be the same as Helmut Marko with Lawson and Hadjar.
Yeah.
If they want him in the big team or they want to move them, click your fingers, mate. That's what's going to happen. Like, unfortunately, mate.
Mate, if you're Hadjar, if Helmut came knocking on your door and you're Hadjar and they're like, mate, we want you in the top team, Hadjar's like, nah, bro. Like,
yeah, no, I'm out of here, mate.
No. Come on.
Yeah. You are signed to Mercedes.
That's your employer.
That's your employer. So whatever they say, unfortunately, goes.
All right, here's another one. I think it would be a great deal. Thank you very much. I think it would be a pretty decent deal too. But I was thinking Flavio wants his own drivers and not develop a competitor's driver, even if they are young. Well, Flavio will do a deal if it means getting cheaper engines. And I'll put this out there. If Flavio was really keen on developing his own drivers, say his name.
Jack Doohan.
Exactly. What type of development was that? And then even replacing him with Colapinto, why didn't he look at, say, Paul Aron?
Exactly.
If you want a development.
Yep. No, why not look within? You've got, is it Kushmani?
Kushmani, yeah, is the other
Paul Aron,
driver. They're
your young drivers. Why not bring them in? You had Jack Doohan. Why not give him the whole season?
And what makes it worse is Briatore is wasn't he Jack Doohan's manager?
Yeah, exactly.
As well?
Exactly. So Briatore is a wheeler and dealer, especially in a cost cap era. If you can get a sweeter deal on your 2026 and beyond engines, like he's already proven it, right? It's about money. That's why he brought Colapinto in, right?
Well, I even want to know what the deal is regarding, say, Paul Aron being loaned out to Sauber for FP1. Why wasn't he doing that for Alpine?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, Franco needs time in the car, but Gasly's pretty experienced. You could have just replaced Gasly, right? I still don't really know. Again, admittedly, I haven't really looked into if there has been news regarding why it happened.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show there was a deal made there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah. No.
Flavio's old school.
Yeah.
Like he loves a good deal.
Yeah. I don't think, to be honest, I don't feel like Fabio had any interest in developing within. He wants two solid drivers. I mean, you're going to get that with Kimi anyway. Kimi, he should be able to go there and do a good job.
Yeah, and I think for the commercial side of it as well, it would bring a lot of eyes onto Alpine, which sponsors will like to get involved as well. So from a commercial aspect, then perhaps he will happily let go of a year or two of development of his own inner circle.
Yeah.
Maybe he loans out Aron because, I mean, there are some pretty good raps on Aron.
Yeah.
So, again, this is why we think none of this is out of the realms of possibility, even if it is just the slightest chance.
Yeah.
Dumb. Max won't leave Red Bull till his contract is up. He has a lot of ties with Red Bull besides just driving. If he left Red Bull, he wouldn't drive F1. He has other things he wants to do besides F1. I think it would be wild if Russell doesn't have a car, but then again, Checo wants a seat.
Well, why would Max not drive F1?
Even the cat agrees with you. Gave you the, yep, agreed.
Even the cat. I don't understand the Max wouldn't drive F1 bit, because Max could turn around and say, I'm a free agent, and every single team on that grid would be throwing money at Max to get him in that car.
And then when you look at Aston Martin, like you said in the other video, there could potentially be a lot of zeros on that contract.
Yeah, more zeros than probably most other teams.
Exactly.
Plus, Max wants to do other things outside of F1. Well, another team, Aston Martin, got the Valkyrie hypercar program in WEC. There's the GT3 Verstappen.com racing team that he has. If you're Lawrence Stroll even if you're Toto Wolff, bro, you want to go do Le Mans? Go ahead. We'll fit someone to fill that seat.
Let's not forget about Fernando Alonso when he was at McLaren and he went off and did Indy.
Exactly.
Verstappen would come with so much negotiation power on his side that it kind of makes sense that his next contract, I'm pretty sure he'll be looking at, all right, I'll sign with you, but I want to do this in 2026 or I want to do this in 2027.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
I know he has come out and said most of this stuff will probably happen after I walk away from the sport, but I'm sure the conversation and the negotiation for that to happen is there. And that's why I think one of the drivers for Verstappen to look into a new contract or potentially move into another team, that's part of it.
Yeah, like Aston Martin would be the perfect fit because it then opens those avenues for Max to go and do those other things.
Yep.
So
it's kind of it's a no-brainer when you look at it from that point.
And I mean, if you're Lawrence, you'd be going, you want to do those things? I can help you.
Yeah,
Plus, there's more zeros on my contract than there are on Toto's.
Than what Toto can give you.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I think it would be wild. You know, he mentions, I think it would be wild if Russell doesn't have a car. Look, Russell's going to have a car.
Yeah.
He's not going to be left out in the cold.
Yeah.
How old is he? 27? I think.
Yeah.
In the prime, proven race winner, proven performer. If it's not Mercedes, another big team will snap him up.
There's potentially 3 big teams there if Max goes to Mercedes. So Aston Martin frees up, Red Bull frees up, and then you've got Cadillac coming in as well.
Yep.
So there's potentially 3 teams. He would find his feet pretty quickly, and I'm sure he would be in high demand.
This person was obviously pretty upset with it. It's terrible. Why would you destroy Kimi's growth? There is a reason Piastri ran out of there like he was on fire. It's a little different because Flavio wasn't at the helm at that point when Piastri left. But again, going on to the growth, it's not going to destroy his growth. It's a loan period. It's like
you keep
it's
him on the
1
grid.
year, 2 years max.
Yeah.
I would even think it would be 1 year because I think Toto would have seen enough between George and Max, and it will be popcorn. I think there will be fireworks if they have a car like McLaren this year, and what we're seeing with Lando and Oscar at the moment, it's quite calm and methodical. Yes, there's been a few little run-ins, but once we get to the business end, fireworks.
Yeah,
expect fireworks, and I would expect the same thing with George and Max.
Yeah, I mean, plus Toto's got experience dealing with those sort of situations anyway, so I don't believe Toto would bring in Max Verstappen with George if he didn't think he was able to control a situation. Kimi leaving F1 would be detrimental to his growth. Him staying in F1 is not going to harm him at all. Doesn't matter what team he's in, realistically. It's only his first year. So
it's 12 rounds in, right?
And also too,
first year.
Piastri wasn't backed by Mercedes. So if shit hit the fan, you couldn't go, we're taking him back.
Exactly. Yep. It definitely is a different situation.
Yeah.
Now, I think it is much more likely to let Russell go than Kimi. Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely plausible. Toto would definitely be able to deal with them, but I truly believe that Max and Kimi with a good car could be the best lineup on the grid. Yes, I agree. Max and Kimi in a team with one of the best cars would be very formidable, but I think if we're talking about 2026, I think Max and George would be even more formidable.
Yeah.
Just because of the stage at where Kimi is in his career.
Yeah, exactly. I can't disagree with that. Right now, for me, Toto is looking more at 2027. When you look at the contract that they offered George, it's got to be looking for 2027.
Obviously, I think Max is going to make the move for next year, but I actually really think it's going to be Aston Martin. Because of what you pointed out earlier, I think WEC, the whole Le Mans thing, extremely tempting. The Newey effect, Newey will be feeding him, like you said, giving him a wink in the paddock, like everything's on the right track. We're looking good for next year.
Yep.
And naturally,
Honda.
The engine supplier will be feeding Max information of where the development is at. So I think Aston Martin realistically is Max's destination for next year. But again, who knows? Maybe nothing changes. Max sees out his contract, and this is all a moot point.
Yeah. Well,
and it's just fever speculation.
If Max goes next year, I would say Aston. If he's going to go 2027, Mercedes would probably be the likely option.
And I actually think this is probably going to be Max's last hurrah as far as a contract is signed. I don't see him signing like a long-term contract. I think this will probably be, 2 years max wherever he goes.
Yeah.
And I actually think he'll finish up and go on to do all those other things that he has openly said that he'd like to do. And I think this all happens probably before he's 30.
Yeah.
Which is insane when you think at Alonso, 42, Hamilton, 40.
Yeah. That's the power Max wields, right? 4-time world champion, proven race winner, probably right now is the best driver on the grid. Max holds all the power right now in Formula One. And whatever he decides to do is all the other pieces will fall in around him.
Exactly, because naturally Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso, whether George leaves, where does he go? Does someone else open up? We've got Cadillac. Surely they're going to make an announcement soon of what their plans are. Plenty of speculation about nearly every driver on the grid. We made a bit of a joke that we think Max is going to be linked to them possibly this week or next week because everybody's linked there. So yeah, let's see which domino falls first. Well, there you have it. Yes, it is a pretty wild theory. It got people talking, and would love to hear your comments below in the comment section. Big thumbs up and a sub would be greatly appreciated. Mick, you got anything to finish off with?
It's been good reading a lot of the comments that people have made. A lot of people have actually taken the time and thought about it. It's good to see that we can evoke that sort of reaction in people. So until then, we'll catch you in the next one.
Catch you in the next one.